Now, a really disturbing new CNN investigation has uncovered what has been described as online rape academy, where men across the world were allegedly sharing tips on how to drug women, often their own wives and partners, and carry out sexual assaults without their knowledge. It comes amongst growing concerns over the rise of misogyny and violence against women. And Nadia, I know you've sort of been across this story as such, and it's almost hard to believe that it can exist out there, and people are constantly filtering into it.
Wow. I mean, we all became first aware of this, probably, didn't we? But many of us with the Giselle Pellicot case, which blew my mind. How many men in such a small, relatively small radius could do something like that? And I think we were almost just like coming back up from the punch of that to then see this report. And actually, I was really frustrated that Luce wasn't on, because I so wanted to talk about that. The thought that thousands of men went to this, not all of those men would have carried it out, some of it would have been fantasy, but I know thousands of videos were shared and lots of sharing on exactly how to knock your partner out so you could do whatever you want. Chilled me to the bone. And I was so pleased about how many conversations there were about it, because it's almost like one that you don't want to talk about, isn't it? Because it's just too horrific. But so quickly the conversation seemed to turn to not all men, right? Of course it is not all men. But certainly the way I run my life, and I get my kids to run their life, is until I know a man, I have to think that he's potentially dangerous. Now, I know that lots of people get very irritated about that, but that's how I keep myself safe. If a lift opens and there's just one man in it, I'm not going to get in it. And I would tell the same to my kids. If there's a man at the end of an alleyway on his own, I'm not going to get down. Because until I know, I don't know. And the thing is about these stories is that only just keeps confirming it to me, because this is right across the world. There are men thinking like this. I have a friend whose own husband spiked her. So you would never, ever guess. If you saw him, if you met him, you would think, not in a million years. So we mustn't shut down the conversation by saying not all men. We know it's not all men. You know, if a flight came down, if there was a crash with a you know, and there was a bad pilot, would we all have to sit there going, no, it's not all pilots? I see this as an emergency situation. You know, the Pellicot case, then this one, and God knows how many we never hear about. And I think we need to keep having the discussion. Where does it come from? And we need men to help us more, because we need the good men to help us more, because it's exhausting. We are exhausted from keeping us and our daughters safe.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because there's so many fantastic things about the dawn of the internet. But things like this is where people with that kind of level of thinking can all find each other very easily and validate each other from all corners of the globe. But, you know, we have to say to ourselves, statistically, that with however many people there are in the world, it's small, but it's, you know, it's still deeply worrying. And I kind of worry now that, sort of putting that to one side, but just you mentioned the word misogyny, you know, misogyny in society, etc., and we always talk about the bad old days of the 70s, you know, and it was like, oh, men would say this and men would say that, and you would, you know, whatever. I prefer to have it there in front of me so I can say, that's misogynistic, don't say that, whatever. I'd rather have that than, I feel a lot of this now has been driven underground. So we've got a lot of this all like hashtag be kind, we're a much kinder society. I'm not so sure that we are.
Oh, God.
I feel every day now that we're not a kinder society. I feel there's a lot of anger out there. A lot of, you know, not looking out for other people. So I think that is an extreme example, but I think there's also another wider issue, just generally for everybody, not just men.
I
agree with Jane. I think it is across board, and I probably, with you, Nadia, I'm probably one of the people that will probably say, in the mix of the balance of the conversation, would probably be like, you know, but not all men. And I think, like, I'm very aware, we see it every day, that we have to be so cautious, unfortunately, of any man that we engage with, like you said, until you know better. I only worry that sometimes in conversations or even media or even, you know, anything like that, that instead of having the conversation of how to keep us safe, it then becomes a battle of the sexes. And even the men who would be standing up and championing for us, they just feel like, oh, well, they just feel like we're all like that. So I don't ever want to lose the good guys, and yes, they should stand up and feel strong enough to stand up for us. But I don't want to lose, make the conversation be lost.
But don't you think we rush too fast, Judy, to save the feelings of the good men?
Well, for me, it's not saving
this is a horror
their feelings.
story. What was happening to
I
them
hear you.
is a horror story. And within a very short amount of time, we're turning round to save the feelings of the good men.
I don't see it as saving the feelings.
Frustrating.
I don't see it as saving the feelings. I'm seeing it as keeping the conversation open so it doesn't flip over that it's just a battle of women and men.
What we need is the good men on side.
Yeah, we want them on side.
Exactly.
We don't want that, especially the ones who are younger and maybe hasn't seen the whole holistic picture of what's going on. They just might see one interview, they just might hear one conversation and just feel like, well, it doesn't even make sense to me have an opinion about it. Don't get me wrong, I stand there completely in saying that we need protected. This being out there, whether it was 5% or 50%, is a danger to us and most and all women, but we still want those men who know that this is wrong to stand up with us and not feel like we're just saying all men. We want them to still be vocal.
Yeah, you know, are you a man that's bought a woman 4 doubles when she's asked for 2 singles?
Yeah,
that's spiking.
Yeah.
Are you doing that to push things along a bit?
Are you a man that if you see your friends are like on a particular girl and she's tipsy and they're a bit, are you going to say to them, just back off?
Yeah.
And we want those men to know that when we are standing here saying we're scared of men, you can still feel strong enough to say, OK, I know you're not talking about me.
Don't get your feelings hurt, guys.
Yeah.
Don't get... This isn't actually about your feelings.
No.
This is about your daughter, your mother, your auntie, your grandmother.
Yeah.
It's about us and our feelings and our fears and what can you do? Take your emotion out of it.
But I think you're right that the conversation...
we're not talking about you.
I think you're right that the conversation needs to be had a lot more by men. Instead of just us keep saying, the men need to do... We need to see the men, the ones marching, the men's having the interviews, the men standing up and saying enough is enough.
Can you imagine if there was an incredible march through the streets of London by men saying this
enough,
is enough? Imagine that.
Yeah.
Go on, there's a challenge. Who's going to be the great guy that does that?
Absolutely. And generally the kindness thing, like you say, Jane, I do agree with that too. As a society, I think a lot of people just don't see others around them anymore at all. And I think that it all feeds into everything where it's like we're all quite capable of
people are worried about getting involved as well, which I understand.
Yeah,
I do.